Mother care. Thank you very much for that. Okay, the fourth presentation is Astrid Berg. Astrid Berg Astrid Berg specializes in the area of psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry. She's going to be speaking to us today around why infants need rights, and she is intricately involved in the Western Cape First 1,000 Days initiative.
Thank you, Sonia. I want to thank Elmarie for having made it possible that you all have a copy of the position paper of the World Association for Infant Mental Rights in your bags. And my talk really today is to lead up to it and why we think it is important that there be a separate or an additional declaration on the rights of infants, and that they need more than to be included in children in general. So the question is, why is infancy unique? As we've heard so very eloquently from Niels and Simon, that infancy is a time of the most rapid brain and behavioral development. And because the brain is developing so quickly, the brain is sensitive to environmental influences, both good and bad. So if the brain is exposed in pregnancy to physically toxic substances, this will affect the brain immediately and profoundly. Similarly, emotionally traumatic environments will affect the brain. There is lots of evidence for this. My task is not to go into that now. The third aspect that makes infants unique is that they are absolutely dependent on the caregiver for survival, which is also what Niels talked about. Why? Because caregivers regulate the infant's emotional and physical states. Not only does the caregiver feed the baby and protect the baby so that the baby can survive, the caregiver also brings down the infant's distress. Otherwise, the infant would be crying forever and would eventually completely decompensate. So it's both for emotional regulation and for survival of the physical state. And it is out of this regulation that the first relationships evolve, and these form the basis for future relationships with others and with the world. So if we look at it, going from a neonate to a 9-month-old, just in very sort of gross terms, the kind of intricacies that happen in brain development and how much the caregiver is needed in this. The problem is that infants cannot tell us this, that they have no voice, they have no words, they have a voice, but they have no words, they have no lobby, and that is the responsibility that we carry. So briefly, what is secure attachment? Attachment research is probably the area is most widely researched, in addition to the neurosciences, of course. And there's a lot of literature, but I won't go into any of this. I want to make it very simple here. A secure attachment is the relationship that makes the infant feel safe and secure, and from which he and she can explore the world. So safety, a secure base, and being able to explore the world, to be curious, to crawl away, to have a look, to come back. That's a secure attachment. And it does not have to be with the mother only, it is also with the father. Thank you very much, Niels, for bringing in the father, because the research is showing more and more the important and unique role that fathers play. So in the first 3 years of life, the young child needs the actual interaction with the caregiver to become attached to them. A child is not going to attach to his biological mother from whom he was separated at birth and gets returned at 4 years. It's not a biological like you smell your mother. You do smell your mother in the first 1,000 seconds, absolutely. But you do not, if you are separated from your mother, given into foster care, and at 3 or 4 years, the biological mother comes and says, "This is my child," the child won't recognize that person as its parent. It's very important to realize this. So in the first 3 years of life, it's that person, be it mother, father, be it granny, be it child carer, that actually feeds the infants, holds the infants, rocks the infant, gets up at night. That's the attachment person. And each caregiver and child have their unique way of interacting with each other. No caregiver smells the same, rocks in the same way, sings in the same way. So it's a very unique relationship that develops from the beginning. Thus, for a secure attachment to develop, the parent, the caregiver, you will notice I'm avoiding mother. I want to really us to broaden it to parent. Need to be available in a way that is consistent, which is not so when the parent suffers from mental ill health, as Simone had said, which is predictable, which is not so in settings of war and domestic violence, where you never know what's going to happen in the next hour. And it is continuous, which is not so with frequent changes of caregivers. So a child going from foster care to another foster care, or from one day mother to another day mother, will not be able to develop a secure attachment, because every time they've got to start from new. So as artists always are so apt at depicting, you see these two children who don't look like they're going to have a wonderful future on the trajectory. I mean, I think this Otto Dix is a German painter, is just amazing. I mean, this is a obviously not thriving infant looking away, a very depressed mother looking into the distance, and the other one is a sculpture from South America, where also the child is trying to look at the mother and the mother is not responding. As opposed to this little boy who is my other grandchild, who grew up in the loving care of his mother and maternal grandmother, and is now ready to go to school and can do all the things that David spoke about, because he had a secure attachment. So why is attachment important? Just a little bit of research, because, you know, what I'm saying may sound like quite romantic and, oh, it's sweet, and it's like motherly and grandmotherly, and sort of makes intuitive sense, but there is science behind it and research. So a secure attachment predicts positive parent-child relationships, better peer relationships, positive child-teacher relationships, higher self-esteem, and greater resiliency. So a child who's been securely attached will be able to bounce back later on with much greater ease than a child who's insecurely attached. Resiliency means you have a trauma, but you get over it more quickly. Another study, a secure attachment protects the child from experiencing toxic stress, which has also been mentioned, so that a child who's been securely attached who will not so easily develop toxic stress because the buffering effect of being with his parent. Attachment security also provides the foundation for empathic concern and caregiving. And we know that there are many young children in schools today where we wonder, where is their empathy? How can they do this to another child? And the basis for empathy comes from the first 3 years of life and the experience therein. So, the World Association for Infant Mental Health has a position paper on the rights of infants. It is not yet a declaration, but we're on the way to presenting this to, or we have presented it to the United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Child. I ask you to look at it. I'm briefly going to go through it here, and to email me with any queries you have, because the great concern is that this not be a upper income sort of idea, Northern Hemisphere countries, but that these declaration or these principles are universal, and that was the attempt when it was drafted. So there are 3 needs and 4 rights in the 7 basic principles. The need for special safeguard and care, including legal protection, and this has to do with the infant's absolute dependence. Then there's the need for responsive and sensitive caregiving relationships, which I have outlined, and these need to be really understood and protected, also legally. You have no idea how many fights I have had with social agencies and legal people even, that this foster child should not be removed from its foster mother because that is this child's psychological mother. So the need for responsive and sensitive caregiving relationships need to be recognized and understood and protected, giving attention to the unique ways that infants express themselves. As I said, they don't have words, but if you look at them closely, you can see what they need and what they want. And that the infant is a person from the beginning of life, has a right for identity and an equal value for life. Then the 4 rights to be given nurturance, emotional safety, and love. Love is a word mentioned in here, which is, again, sounds a bit romantic, but the child needs love. That's the dopamine, and that's love. The right to be protected from neglect, abuse, trafficking, the right to access to professional help where available, and the right to palliative care if the infant is in pain. Infants feel pain, and they need to be given the right pain control and palliative care. And these 7 principles are then underpin policy areas, and very quickly enabling parents to care for their infants, parental leave, thinking of paternal leave, minimizing changes in the caregiver, as I've said, giving support for parents, and facilitating emotional support. And that's where the first 1,000 Days campaign sort of is sandwiched in between, giving the information and also facilitating support. Having access to evaluation and treatment where there are risks, access, as I said, to palliative care, and also giving parents skills, information, something that Mark will now talk about, and treatment. And very importantly, allocation of resources for training and supervision of caregivers in institutions, foster parents. People in children's home need good training, they need good salaries too. So, in conclusion, infancy is the most sensitive and important phase, the most sensitive and important phase in human development. Infants have no voice to lobby for their needs and rights. Societies and communities are the collective parents who speak and act on behalf of infants. We ignore the needs and rights of infants at our own and, I dare say, humanity's peril. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Astrid. It really strikes me from the presentations we've just heard, all 4 of them, firstly, the intergenerational implications of not being cognizant of all of these factors. And secondly, the implications for our health and social services. Our hospitals